Have you ever woken up one morning to find that the child you have nurtured, raised, and made sacrifices for is hardly paying attention to you anymore? It may come as a surprise shock. One day, you'll be the main caretaker and know everything. And then, after decades of assisting your kids, spending hundreds of miles to drive them to sports practice, spending countless dollars on their education, and helping them navigate life's ups and downs, it feels as though your thoughts and experiences are dismissed. This shift can be upsetting as well as unpleasant. All of a sudden, your children's roles start to change, and you start to question what went wrong. They may roll their eyes when you tell them a story, ignore Bush's counsel, or even speak to you in a condescending manner. Worst of all, instead of treating you as someone whose wisdom should be valued, they may treat you like a nuisance. However, the truth is that expressing anger or frustration won't cure the issue on its own. Actually, it frequently has the opposite effect. Anger can lead to rifts that deepen over time. Tensions might rise during arguments to the point where neither party wants to call or visit. This is why it's so critical to address this matter in a composed yet firm manner. You need a plan that lets you maintain your self-respect and dignity without alienating your kids or saying anything you'll later come to regret. It shouldn't be bitterness or grief at the conclusion of all your years of commitment and affection. Whether it's the money you spent to help them achieve their objectives, the emotional energy you invested in making sure they were happy, or the late-night solace you provided when they had nightmares, you deserve to be recognized for everything you've done. It's time to rebalance your children's life if you're seeing indications that they no longer respect your voice. They may be mothers or even families now, and in the rush of everyday obligations, they may be inadvertently putting you last on their list of priorities. You don't have to put up with disrespect or neglect because of this. In actuality, there are much more effective ways to regain respect than reprimanding, badgering, or inciting guilt trips. These strategies involve introspection, assertive communication, and, above all, maintaining your own emotional health. When you establish constructive boundaries, reaffirm your value, and portray yourself as a person with a full, fulfilling life, your kids start to see the parent they once looked up to. They recall the importance of your advice. I'm going to show you 6 effective techniques in this video that you can do immediately to help your kids see you as valuable and deserving again. Every phase is intended to support you in developing a more harmonious, loving relationship in which your needs are acknowledged, your voice is heard, and your contributions are respected. Even though some of these concepts may seem strange or even counterintuitive, I want you to follow me through to the very conclusion. By putting these tactics into practice, you'll regain your proper position as a source of knowledge and encouragement rather than a bothersome afterthought. Therefore, if you're prepared to take back your role and improve your family relationship in a healthy and constructive manner, keep an eye out, since all you've been longing for might be just a few little changes in perspective. Imagine this. You have dedicated your life to your children, rearranging doctor's appointments, traveling across town to assist with last-minute errands, and granting their demands even when you were feeling exhausted. Although it could have appeared that this was the greatest method to keep the family together, respect isn't really earned by making unending sacrifices for others. When you show that your time, emotions, and well-being are as important as everyone else's, respect increases. I remember a wonderful woman named Margaret when she was younger. She organized charity events, was a devoted volunteer at her local church, was the pillar of her family and community, and was a self-assured professional who never shied away from speaking her mind. However, a minor change occurred when she was in her mid-60s. She began to delegate all decision-making authority to her adult children. It started out little, letting them choose restaurants or arrange her schedule, but it got to the point where they completely ignored her suggestions. Margaret was confused and hurt when she discovered she no longer recognized the one powerful lady she had been. The way her kids behaved hadn't altered in a day. years of her were required. Ignoring the hurt of their patronizing remarks, putting their needs ahead of her own, and remaining silent when they dismissed her views. She thought she was maintaining the peace by complying with everything and avoiding confrontation. She was actually losing her voice. Margaret had to learn the hard lesson that love feels less free and respectful the more we sacrifice our own wants to gain it. Reminding them of your sacrifices and lashing out are not the first steps to changing this dynamic. The first step is to quit behaving as though you need their approval. Set limits, even if they are first uncomfortable. Respect your own time and space, and speak up even when you're afraid they won't agree with you. Your kids are far more inclined to value you if they realize that you value yourself. This restored sense of self-worth can eventually assist you in regaining your proper position as an important and esteemed member of their life. No one outgrows regard for a parent who has never lost their own value, even though children may outgrow the need for parental advice in some areas. Have you ever attempted to make someone appreciate you only to discover that the more you try, the more quickly it eludes you? Pointless lectures and acrimonious arguments don't foster respect. It is gained by the way you behave under pressure. Consider the case of Frank, a retired educator who oversaw a class of energetic teenagers with ease, but who was treated like an afterthought by his grown children, who disregarded his counsel and even made fun of his worries, bewildered and hurt. At first, Frank did what many of us would. He fought, reminded them of his lifelong commitment, listed all the sacrifices he had made, and insisted they pay attention. However, his children grew more aloof the more he yelled. Then he modified his strategy, and everything was different. Frank chose to project the same assured demeanor he had formerly brought to his classroom. Rather than attempting to prove himself verbally, he actually listened. His children began to notice without a single argument the quiet strength that made him a respected teacher for so many years. His calm dignity accomplished what innumerable arguments could not. Frank listened when his children spoke calmly when he had something important to add, and allowed silence to settle disagreements instead of escalating them over time. It restored the deference he was due. I once had a friend of Frank's named Linda, who used a similar idea in her family and found that her adult son began to value her words more the fewer battles she chose. Respect isn't about winning. It's about demonstrating consistently that your value as a person transcends any short-term disagreement. By living up to that idea, you alter not only their viewpoint, but also the dynamics of your relationship as a whole. The fact that your children are not in charge of your emotional health is one of the hardest things to come to terms with in later life. A loving bond can start to feel more like a burden, fostering impatience and even resentment instead of gratitude. Yes, you love them very much, and you naturally want their love and respect in return. However, the moment they realize that you depend on them to feel worthy or content, the entire balance of your relationship abruptly changes. It's not that your kids don't care anymore. It's because partnerships that require continual affirmation or approval tend to alienate people. You demonstrate to your kids that you have a life outside of waiting for them when you regain your emotional independence by finding contentment in new interests, friendships, and personal development. And as strange as it may seem, that freedom tends to bring them closer. Helen, a kind woman I once met, was the epitome of this. She spent every moment of her life making sure her kids were content, paying for college, providing last-minute babysitting for her grandchildren, and seldom turning down requests. She found herself waiting for her children to call when they didn't, though, as they became older and busier. Instead, she called them several times a week, letting them know how much she missed them. Rather than fostering a closer relationship, her repeated requests felt like a duty to her kids. Conversations seemed awkward and tense, and they were less eager to answer her calls. Helen made the decision that enough was enough one day. She signed up for a weekly art class because she had always wanted to do that, but had never been able to. She started going out to coffee with friends and even found volunteer opportunities in the area that gave her a sense of direction. She stopped loitering on social media or making obtrusive phone calls to check in on her children. A seemingly minor behavioral change led to a significant emotional breakthrough. Her children were no longer burdened with Helen's every emotional need, and they began to genuinely desire to call and come visit. They took pleasure in listening to her about her latest endeavors and interests. Stepping away from neediness gave Helen the respect and independence she had been secretly craving for years. This is a straightforward but profound lesson. It is not about separating yourself from your family. When you pursue your own interests and don't base your value on anyone else, including your own children, you become an inspiration rather than a burden. Your kids will respect your boundaries, value your personal development, and see you with admiration rather than obligation. It's about cultivating your own happiness so that you come into every encounter as a whole, contented person. It may seem overwhelming to separate yourself even a little from the people you have spent a significant portion of your life raising, but that change in viewpoint can make the difference between feeling like an afterthought and being valued for the smart, resilient parent you truly are. However, we consistently observe that the less you depend on your kids to make you feel valuable, the more they will notice your intrinsic worth. Helen found that her kids no longer cared, therefore they weren't pulling away. They were moving away from the underlying assumption that she relied on them to be happy. Her children instinctively appreciated her time and tried to stay in touch after she started focusing on pursuing her own interests. She reminded them of the importance of her presence and demonstrated her ability to stand solidly on her own 2 feet. However, self-reliance is only half the story. Defined and regularly enforced boundaries are also necessary for true respect. A lot of parents think that allowing disrespect keeps the family together, but in practice, it just teaches their kids to keep stepping over boundaries you've never set. Think about Robert, a retired businessman who successfully managed a company for decades with clarity and decisiveness. He observed instant changes at home when he followed the same principles, insisting on basic decency and calmly speaking up if his children interrupted or disparaged him. His kids may not have loved the new restrictions at first, but they changed their conduct to set their own boundaries after realizing he wasn't bending. Start by identifying specific behaviors or statements that make you feel disrespected. Then calmly and clearly communicate these boundaries. Avoid reprimands or guilt trips. Instead, use simple statements like, "I expect we listen to each other without interruptions," or, "If we can't keep our voices down, this conversation will end." If these boundaries are violated, the conversation will end. The secret is consistency. Setting boundaries haphazardly simply makes things more confusing and undermines your position. When you follow through, you'll be surprised at how fast others start to appreciate your new boundaries. You may establish a harmonious relationship where your love for your kids and your respect for yourself are unwavering by combining emotional freedom with strict yet caring boundaries. By responding with firm, unambiguous statements such as, "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen," Robert demonstrated that his voice mattered and immediately realized that calmly standing his ground was more effective than any heated argument. At first, his adult children objected, saying he was being too sensitive, but Robert remained firm, reminding them that he was just asking them to be kind to him and wasn't attempting to change their minds. He clarified that if they were unable to, he would withdraw from discussions where rudeness was the rule. His children may have initially tried him by interrupting him in the middle of a sentence or rolling their eyes, but he never faltered. Eventually, they recognized that they were the ones who needed to change if they desired a relationship with him. Robert would gently end the conversation without raising his voice until they were ready to participate. Eventually, agitated, they realized their father was serious and started to be polite to him as he requested. C became reliable, As they became closer, they began to see limits as a manifestation of Robert's self-worth rather than as something that was restricting or outdated. The narrative of Donna, a retired nurse who loved her grandchildren but felt more ignored by her adult daughter, has a similar metamorphosis. Whenever Donna attempted to offer advice on nutrition and health, her daughter would discard it. Donna gently declared that she would stop sharing her professional views until her daughter genuinely valued them, since she was fed up with the contempt. This first caused resistance, but after a few weeks, the daughter understood the breadth of her mother's knowledge and missed having it at her fingertips while tactfully reiterating her boundaries. In addition to gaining greater respect, Donna's relationship with her family was strengthened. It's a straightforward yet significant lesson. Standing up for yourself, whether it's by stopping a conversation or choosing to leave an unpleasant circumstance, compels those around you to either match your standards or risk losing your business. If you continue to accept disrespect, it becomes the norm for how people treat you. At first, this could be awkward, but genuine respect rarely develops without some difficulty. You convey a strong message when you maintain your boundaries. I trust you to cherish yourself as much as I do. Children who genuinely care will eventually adapt. Instead of stressful standoffs, you'll find yourself enjoying more relaxed and meaningful interactions. Keep in mind that it's not about being severe or ignoring them completely. I love you, but I also love myself. That's what it's all about. Paradoxically, having this level of confidence tends to bring your loved ones closer. The key to regaining the respect you've worked so hard to earn is for them to see you in the same light once they see that you value yourself. It's normal for a loving parent to want to provide unwavering support, including financial assistance, emotional support, and even a shoulder to weep on when necessary. After all, a lot of us were raised with the idea that unrestricted generosity equates to unconditional love. But here's the thing. Giving all the time, especially to people who don't appreciate it, can undermine respect and convert thankfulness into entitlement. Unconditional love and unconditional enabling are not the same thing. Your generosity becomes a transaction your kids feel entitled to, rather than a treasured link when they begin to view it as a given rather than a gracious act. And they don't feel guilty when you have to draw the boundary. They are irritated. Consider George's tale. George was the kind of father who said yes to everything, including loans for new cars, last-minute babysitting, and rearranging his entire schedule to accommodate family gatherings. However, he received complaints that his kids wanted more, faster, and with less hassle instead of appreciative smiles or sincere thank yous. Ultimately, George found himself alone, disillusioned, and disappointed, and he made a difficult turn when he truly needed their assistance. Only when asked did he offer assistance, and even then, he imposed rules that honored his own time and personal space. His kids were initially perplexed, and some were even upset, but then something amazing happened. They started to appreciate his assistance more after discovering that it wasn't limitless. Sometimes sincere gratitude took the place of contemptuous comments, and polite requests took the place of demands. Some may contend that genuine parental love should be unconditional and that parents have a need to provide for their children. But duty and strong family ties can coexist without making you a lifelong safety net. Refusing to allow unappreciative behavior does not imply withholding affection, nor does it mean undermining your own well-being or protecting grown children from learning responsibility and thankfulness. They're learning to appreciate you and the advantages you offer. Additionally, you're paving the way for more genuine, long-lasting connections, where giving is valued rather than just accepted. Take a moment to consider whether you are teaching your kids that my resources, time, money, and energy are infinite, or whether you are locked in a loop of giving and giving some more. The solution might hold the secret to reestablishing real respect and admiration, not via confrontation, but rather a constructive reevaluation of what it means to genuinely care and to break. Breaking free from overgiving tendencies will allow you the emotional room you need to take on the next important step: creating a life outside of your children's environment so your happiness isn't dependent on their approval. Realizing that your children have started to view you as someone who exists only for their convenience after years of you focusing your life on them is a heartbreaking moment. They may have pushed you to the sidelines, forgetting that you have your own goals, hobbies, and desires. The fact is, though, that people admire those who demonstrate their independence, who have interests, friendships, and a busy existence independent of other people's approval or schedule. By pursuing your own interests, you not only demonstrate your independence, but also encourage your kids to be curious and appreciative. Consider Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s who had devoted her life to her children following the death of her husband. She contacted them every day, gave them unsolicited advice, and waited by the phone for an invitation that never appeared. Her children visited less frequently because they were overburdened by her incessant need for attention. Eleanor's heart was heavy with loneliness as she suddenly found herself alone. Her decision to volunteer at her community center, join a local travel group, and join a reading club changed her life at that point. In a surprising turn of events, she found a feeling of purpose she had long since lost by venturing outside of her comfort zone. As she grew more independent, her kids started calling and visiting more frequently, curious to learn about her latest experiences and accomplishments. Their interest evolved into sincere admiration and an understanding that she was leading a meaningful life rather than just a transitory fad. Ask yourself this brave question if you find yourself in a similar situation. Do my kids think I'm a person with limitless passions and interests? Or do they imagine me just sitting around waiting for their next phone call or visit? You allow your kids to see you as a complete, multifaceted person when you show them that your identity and pleasure extend much beyond the family circle. Instead of being someone they feel compelled to please, you start to become someone they want to learn from. By turning your attention to self-enrichment, you'll discover that you're living, not simply existing, and that respect automatically returns to your relationships in that radiant place of self-discovery, making the parent-child link deeper, richer, and incredibly more fulfilling. I want to leave you with a thought as we conclude today's video. Respect is something you inspire, not something you can demand. When the individuals you've raised and cared for a long time begin to treat you with less regard or consideration, it's natural to become frustrated. You may question why your kids don't seem to respect your counsel or consider your feelings. The reality is that you cannot make anyone, not even your own children, appreciate you. Instead, you earn it by living a dignified life, setting boundaries, and carrying yourself with honor. I encourage you to change your viewpoint if you're feeling offended or even furious because your kids are no longer prioritizing you. It's not about reminding them of all you've done for them, fighting for their respect, or demanding it, all of which frequently only cause additional annoyance and a growing sense of separation. Rather, stand back and consider what I may do differently to earn the respect I am due. The way you conduct yourself around them, the limits you establish, and your life outside of parenthood all play a part in the solution. Giving up trying to win their approval is one of the first steps. You may have lived your entire life prioritizing their wants, but the harsh reality is that the more you strive for their acceptance, the less they will regard you. It's easy for kids to take you for granted when you consistently prioritize their demands over your own, which teaches them that your feelings are unimportant. The important thing is to quit looking to them for approval. Rather, affirm yourself. Prove to them that your value is independent of their acceptance. You may be amazed at how much respect comes easily once you quit needing it. Setting a good example is another essential element. Your initial reaction may be to quarrel with your kids to remind them of everything you've done if they treat you disrespectfully, ignore your thoughts, or talk over you. However, this just serves to reinforce their sense of control over you. Respect comes from within you, not from words. You may demonstrate your presence by the way you react to those who try to test your tolerance. If you react angrily to disrespect, you're only reinforcing their idea that they can manipulate you. You'll see a change in how they treat you, gradually starting to recognize you as the unique and dignified person you really are. However, when you carry yourself with calm confidence, your dignity speaks louder than any argument could. Building a life apart from them is something else you need to accomplish. It's simple for many parents to fall into the trap of making their kids the center of the world, But as you get older, that dynamic can change, and your happiness should no longer be centered on getting their attention or approval. If your kids see you as someone who lives freely, follows your own interests, and makes your life joyful and meaningful, they will admire you for finding fulfillment outside of your family responsibilities. They will begin to respect your presence because they truly admire you, not because they have to. Consider the tale of Helen, a mother who dedicated years of her life to raising her children. She waited by the phone when they were busy, expecting a call that never arrived. She finally decided on something. She gave up waiting. She traveled with friends, became a member of a reading club, and allowed herself to thrive outside of her motherhood. As a result of what transpired, her kids started interacting more. They appreciated her new hobbies, recognized her independence, and, above all, saw her as someone with a life apart from them. This shift not only made them closer, but it also gave them a newfound respect and admiration for Mom. Consider if your kids view me as someone who has a fulfilling life, or as someone who is only waiting for their attention and whose happiness is solely dependent on their approval if they aren't treating you with the respect you believe they deserve. They will start to treat you differently if you demonstrate your independence and your satisfaction with your own goals. The more you concentrate on leading a happy life that isn't shaped by their behavior or viewpoints, the more they will see what an amazing person you are. They will no longer perceive you as someone in need of them, but rather as someone who, just by virtue of your identity, is deserving of respect. We appreciate your presence today. I would love to know what you think. What is one thing you can do right now to begin earning the respect you are due? If this video was helpful to you, please subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any more insightful videos. Share your story in the comments section below. We are so grateful for your support, which enables us to keep producing content that uplifts and empowers you. Remember that when you live with dignity and purpose, you don't need to ask for respect. It will come to you naturally because you earned it by being true to yourself, not because you sought it. Thanks for watching.